Pinocchio fans, let your noses grow. Good God Almighty, did everything go so well, and then did we finally, some of you are very happy about this, hit the wall. Oh boy, and is it a wall. It is almost bizarre how much of a wall it is. Like, they just went, you know what? If you got here, screw you, dude. Here it comes. And it does indeed arrive. My God. My God. My God. When I left you, I did forget a boss yesterday. I knew I did. And it was Mark. It was like the main antagonist of the early part of the DLC was Mark and her puppet that she was swinging around at the place. I haven't seen the edit of the other TDP, so I don't know if Bex found it and put it in and made a big, like, duh, it was this boss. That was a cool boss. That was very, very cool. It gave me, I liked the idea. They were so kind here. This is the kind of design that I was looking for in the other part of the game, in the early pre-DLC era, where they were like, we're going to make this tough, but we're going to make it fair. Tough but fair. That's always been my joy in these kinds of games, is I want it to be hard, sure, but fair at the same time. And this is very fair, especially because this could be an evil camera boss. So essentially the concept of that fight was that you are fighting her, but she has control over an angelic puppet that she can use as a weapon. And similar to the other council fight with the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, which was not a good fight in my opinion, this time it's going to still switch between who should be fighting at the time, but it gives you good notifications of what the hell is happening here. In terms of her whip that she's connected to the puppet, the string, will glow orange when she's using a puppet attack against you. This gave you tons of options. You could either go for the puppet, take out her weapon, so you're just fighting her, or you could just ignore the puppet and watch these notifications so you could avoid the damage from there and focus on her primarily, because it's her that needs to die. So the first pull I did, I was just checking what the fight was about, you know, let's try this, and then it was time for science. So I was like, okay, let's science killing the puppet and seeing what happens. So I swapped like weapon grind to electric, which is more damaging to puppets. I went in, I killed the puppet in like 3 hits. It has basically no health. And then interestingly, she then goes into a mode of resurrecting the pet, which I thought she would do. That's very normal. If you kill a pet, they're probably going to try and res the pet. But she's vulnerable in that state, so you can put in a lot of damage into her, and if she gets it off. Then I got baited, because the second she resurrected the pet, she started to glow gold, and so did the puppet, and she went into like a frenzy attack. And I was like, oh. This reads to me, incorrectly, but it did read to me as, if you kill the pet, you have a period of time to try and kill her, and then she's essentially going to enrage. If she gets the res off, she's going to enrage, and she's going to massacre you and make the fight incredibly hard, because now you've got a tougher golden version of the boss. So I was like, okay, let's leave that, and let's... a good lesson, as always, is not to jump to a conclusion as quickly as possible. Typically, we are correct, but on occasion, we're not. And go back to, let's work on her, and then kind of ignore the puppet, because it's going to get passively hit, and it might die, and it should line up maybe with, like, killing both of them at the same time. So that's what I did, and I killed her in the next 4 pulls or something. It did turn out that the golden attack, which I found out of the next pull, which was like, oh, it's not that case. It's actually just part of the fight. So that was one of the things you just had to learn what it was. And that's going to be a theme coming up, is they just have these frenzy attacks, and you just have to learn how to cope with it, and then you can get on with the fight again. There's these weird windows of brutal, unnecessary assault, and then you can go for it. But there was ways of countering it so you can keep uptime on it. Good fight. Really good fight. But it was back to the DLC. It was back to the DLC. Some of you are going to be annoyed by this. I did not struggle. I did not struggle. I was pointed in the direction of secret bosses, and it was apparent from my live audience that some people never even found that these bosses exist, which I thought was pretty cool. I want to give a shout out to mainly the first iteration of the swamp monster. Not my favorite fight from the early game, from the base game, but you actually fight the swamp monster in the DLC before it becomes the swamp monster, which means you don't kill it because it escapes at the end of the fight. But I walked into the room and I'm like, oh, this looks like the swamp monster. And my dumb monkey brain did not equate that, yeah, it is the swamp monster because you're in the past. But I didn't know it ran away at the end, so I thought it was just another one of those creatures. But it has all the same attacks, but like a little faster, a little nastier. In particular, what I nicknamed the Thwippy Thwap or Swizzle Sizzle. It could kill you from like 90% to 0 just when it shimmied backwards. Just when it shimmied backwards. And it has multiple grabs that also heal it for a significant amount of HP. I have now learned how to use my Wolverine claws, and I really like them. I really like my Wolverine claws. But I was running into a problem with the first hours. They did no damage. So I did relent to my chat. I'm like, guys, am I missing something here? Because we are spec'd fully into them. We're pretty high level. And I don't want to just give up on these because the gameplay is really fun, because they're just... I'm using them wrong, which is why I'm not doing damage. And it turned out they did need a little bit of a kick into gear, such as the critical strike amulet, and getting into more of a combination flow of heavy and small into Fable attacks, which when combined do astronomical damage. Like once you get this combo going and you sort of spec more into Fable generation, and because you're doing a lot of fast attacks, you can get an amulet that gives you more DPS the more your attacks connect. That combination allows this to like take off in a brilliant, brilliant way. So you get that really fun, fast-paced gameplay. Didn't realize that their durability is absolutely atrocious. If you're not getting exact perfect parries, that is going to come back and bite me later. That is going to come back and bite me later. But the big boss we were coming up to was... I don't even know its name. I'm so sorry, because I saw many people saying this is my favorite fight of the DLC. I have no idea what its name is. It is massive, though. It is their attempts at a massive boss. And I want to round of applause this, because unlike something like Gaping Dragon or something like those in the Souls games, they made the correct choice to pull the camera way out. Not enough to make you look like a little peanut, but enough to pull it out. And they managed to make its moveset. So if it was doing something which should totally screw your camera up, like it did with the DLC Puppet, if you were locked onto it during the Mark fight, that it was nice and clear what was going on. That is the biggest challenge with these monstrously large bosses, is the game is obviously designed for almost like humanoids or slightly larger size enemies. And when it doesn't go that way and it's outside of that sort of box, it can get real screwy. They spent a lot of time making sure your camera was good here. Now, I'm going to say I apologize and why I don't know its name. I killed it like second try. But that was a good thing. There's a bigger discussion here as to what motivates people to play Souls and Souls-like games. There's a lot of people who play these just for the difficulty, regardless of what form that comes in. I'm not going on a philosophical rant here. It's not the place. We'll do it in the conclusion of the game. It's not why I play. And it's also... I actually ascribe to Miyazaki's point on this. Difficulty of these games was never the point. Ever. It was never the point. There are always ways around the difficulty in these games. At least in the Souls games. There's always ways. You can wear a Havel's armor or something and nullify a lot of the damage if you want to. And a weird culture has grown around these games, which, you know, in many ways reminds me of the distinction now in 2025 between Wrath Baby, what it meant when it was coined, and what Wrath Baby is now. I'm not moaning at those people, by the way. I'm just talking about the change in cultural perception is what I'm talking about. Because the change in perception of what something was versus what it is now, because it's been taken and adopted and modified, and this is what it's accepted. The difficulty of the Souls games was never the point. That's in nearly every Miyazaki interview. The whole point of the way the game plays and the difficulty that comes from it was to give the player a sense of satisfaction and overcoming an obstacle. And that doesn't mean that it has to be extremely hard to do that, because that satisfaction can come from just playing well. It's totally fine. And that's the satisfaction I got from it, because I loved this boss. Although I killed it in like I think it was either the second or third try. I think some people would walk away from that saying, well, that boss wasn't very hard. And I'm like, is that all you're looking for? Is kind of my approach to that. It's like, all you're looking for is like, I want to be just beaten into the ground over and over again, because they can do that very, very easily. They can just make it so it like one-shots you, or it just attacks you relentlessly for like 5 minutes. They can make a boss like that, but that's not what I'm looking for. The way I read this boss, it was really nice. Good, long, sweeping movements. Its actual large size actually gave it good indication. There was only one attack I'm not sure how you beat. It's a Consecrate effect. It digs the sword into the floor in phase 2. Consecrates the floor. So I think I did kill it on my 3rd try, because this Consecrate killed me first time. And I think you just have to do a dodge roll or a parry at a very specific time in order to survive this attack, or like not take damage from it. Thankfully, I just had a lot of HP by that point, so it didn't kill me, which I also appreciate. It's like, yeah, you're going to be punished from this, and there's going to be follow-ups. That's the good punishment I like from it. It's like, you didn't get it right, so you're going to get punished from it, and you're not going to be able to attack. So there's a 2-pronged punishment for getting it wrong. Okay, but I love this fight. Great camera work, wonderfully animated, really nice reads on what was going on. And felt very satisfying to cope with, because it had enough HP to be a lengthy fight where it was pushing you towards the end. Reminded me of the Dark Souls 3 dragon, its name escapes me now. The Dark Souls 3 DLC dragon. Medea? I think it's Medea. Yeah, Medea. Medea was a one-shot for me. I know some people struggle with that fight, but I'm much better with these kind of fights where I can read and tell what's going on. And when it gets very messy and fast, that's when I struggle. Wonderful fight. I think our next fight, that was the 2 we killed. We killed there's a lot of bosses in this DLC and some mini bosses. I'm not going to talk too much about the areas now. The theme continues of tiny enemies and then giant enemy for some reason. That's something I hope they modify if they do the Wizard of Oz style game. Is like, let's have some variation here on just not following this exact same pattern over and over again. Bunch of ambushes, tons of little enemies, all positioned strategically just to cause ambushes. They have got much better at it in the DLC. There's less of it, but I have noticed as we get later into the DLC that more of that is creeping back in. Almost like the opening zoo was like, oh, look at what we can do here. And then later on, they're like, okay, this is a linear path across ice that breaks with things just ambushing you all the time. Even though it is funny because they're like little sharks and things. That's kind of funny. My next fight was against, I'm going to get his name wrong because it's like Luciano, I think he's called. He was definitely the very not sussy man that we've met a couple of times on our little journey here. Who's definitely not going to come back and be a fight later. Every time you spoke to this guy, you were like, okay, this guy is absolutely a douche. We're totally going to fight this guy later. One shot. I know. I know some of you are going, dude, what? Like, yeah, like this was fine. I really was like, okay. I actually didn't think anything of it at the time. I thought, oh, that was nice. That was a nice little boss fight. And then I saw a lot of people like, this took me days. But it can happen like that. And that is a good sign. Genuinely, a good sign is you will... I have always found when talking about these kinds of games is there are bosses, people are like, oh, dude, I totally one-shot that boss because it played into my style. It fit me exactly. And then other guys like, that took me forever. And then vice versa happens. Like, this one took me forever. Oh, dude, really? I killed that in a couple of goes. Like, yeah. Some bosses just work to your favor as how you are as a gamer and how you tackle and approach these games. And for me, this was fine. It was like, oh, I could backstab him. I could read, he had a rhythm to his attacks, so it was very rhythmic parries and stuff. I was like, okay, I can deal with this guy. And then he had a phase 2, which was a little slower. So I was like, oh, okay, he's kind of rolling around and jumping around. And also, very possible, I'm not going to discount this, that he might have had 800,000 moves, and he just didn't do some of the really nasty ones when I fought him. That can happen too. You can just, somebody wins the lottery. It happens. But yeah, nice one shot. Moved on. I'm just pointing it out because I know some people are annoyed by it. Don't be. I know, this deterministic nature of we want you to struggle. We want pain to happen. I'm all right. Okay, sure. But they got their eating. Here it comes. I believe it was the boss after this. What's his name? He's the blood artist. I don't even know his name. But this is the final boss of the DLC because it actually warns you in a very big way. It goes, final battle about to start. Go and finish anything else before you do this. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, we're at the final boss. Let's also shout out that they gave you a summon for this fight if you wanted it. Leah, the the legendary Stalker Leah is in the fight, and you get a notification, I think on your second try, where it's like, you can just heal Leah and she will help you in this fight, because this fight might as... I don't know what the exact name of this fight is off memory, but it might as well be called Screw You. This is everything we can think of to murder you into the ground. I will make one comment. I haven't killed the fight yet, and I've done like 60 tries. This fight is really hard. Really, it's bizarrely harder than everything else in this game. It is insanely difficult. I imagine, at least for me, going back to what we said about the previous boss, some people might have just like, oh, I didn't really struggle with that fight. I don't know what build you were using, but goddamn. Goddamn. I will say this. It's an insanely unfair fight, and it's designed that way, clearly, right? We were talking about it. I was like, I'm going to reserve judgment on the fight until we finished it, because it's phase 2 is where I'm working on right now. I got to phase 2 immediately, and then there's a lot of tries working out this phase 2, particularly one point in it. And I was like, well, this is an unfair fight. And people are like, no, of course you're saying that. I'm like, no, I mean, it is. Like, objectively, like, it's a very unfair fight. Why is it unfair? This thing doesn't even know what stamina is. I've never heard of it. Like, no idea. This guy could just attack you 40 plus times. No problem. Depending on what his opener is. And this was a fight where the theme I picked up very quickly was, if you can survive the first 15 seconds of the fight, you're probably going to have a run that gets somewhere. But sometimes that's not going to happen. Because he has a lot of moves. Not a stupid amount, but he has a lot. But the main thing that makes this thing brutal is the counter heal, is what we'll call it, or heal counter. You guys, if you play these games, will know what I mean. If you remotely press the heal button, something will happen within a frame with the boss to kill you. A lot of bosses have these in the Souls games. This is not a new thing. If you've played them, you've recognized it's like, oh, if I press heal, then something happens. It's there's actually a lot of this in this fight. Like, these designed to counter you being aggressive. To the point that I used it against him, which is cool. That's cool. You can use it against him. If he does his, say, jump in the air where he glows red and slams down on you, two things can happen there. If you don't attack within the first, like, point you can attack, he will stand up and then go into another combo immediately. However, if you do attack, he will then do an immediate follow-up to get you back. Now, you can counter that as well. I actually found the counter to that counter easier to do. So I was like, oh, I actually want to bait him here and control this, because he's also, in fairness to the fight, I'm not saying I dislike this fight in any way, there is some fair aspects, such as periodically he will flinch because he's a puppet, and like a little explosion will come off him. And that is very predictable as to when that's going to happen. And he's so relentless. And he's by far the, like I said, he's got no stamina. He has some extreme, he's got everything from a 2-hit combo to, I think, 12. And he could chain them back to back to back. So he could do a 12-hit combo into a 10-hit combo into an 8-hit combo. I had that a few times. And if you're not nailing pretty much every single parry, the sheer chip damage, and this is where my weapons came in, which don't block a lot of damage, will just kill you anyway. Or they will break your weapons. That was a regular issue I was running into, is if I didn't polish off phase 1 very, very quickly, my weapons broke, which then made things very problematic for a guy who, weirdly, every one in like 7 or 8 pulls, he would just sort of AFK and walk around for a while. Not to the point that you could punish him, but he would give you a breathing period. It was very bizarre. It was very, very bizarre. Nothing you could rely on by any means. But what a... getting through phase 1, I did then. So just for a general idea, has some of the nastiest heal counters I've ever seen in a game. And also just infinite stamina. So with a lot of potentially long combos, which can just brutally end your run very quickly. Phase 2. Yeah, this took me longer than I would have liked, but actually I got baited by how you had to do Lax, because it's a repeat of the Lax transition, where Lax went into the air and shot the lightning bolts at you. In that version of this combo, you could reflect the lightning bolts, which would then bring her down to the floor with a big leaping slam, which you had to counter. And I did a number of ways of trying to counter that and couldn't quite get it until I landed the parry. This one's a little different because it's actually easier to time the landing. It's almost like the window on Lax is too small, and they actually made it a bit bigger. I actually felt they did a better read on this one. But very similar. He's going to go into the middle of the arena. He's going to start channeling energy, and then he's going to throw these red skulls at you, just like Lax would. You can parry them, and then he's going to leap down on top of you. That was all fine. I actually countered that very quickly because I'd done it with Lax. But then he follows up with an absolutely enormous AoE that just channels and channels and drains like 70% of your health. And then this combo is set in stone. We'll always do it in the phase 2 transition. We'll then go into, I think it's 1, 2, 3. There's a pause, then 1, 2, and then a channel. So we'll call that 6 and 7 because it swippy swaps you, and then he does another 2. So it's like a 9 to 10 hit combo with an explosive ground follow-up. And it will always do this. I could not, for the life of me, a good chunk of my pulls were like, how do I not take damage from this AoE? I couldn't find a parry window for it. I'm sure one exists. And then it was like, well, it's an AoE. So my initial thought was actually just to run away from it. So as soon as he lands, let's get away. No matter what I did, I could not get the range to run away. Part of that is because when you go into a run, you can't, your character will kind of dodge first, which also has a stop animation before you get going. And I kept getting to... the furthest I could get was like to the tail end of it, which would still cause like 40% of my health to be drained. And then it goes into this big combo, which I was still learning, to parry, parry, parry. It's like parry, 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 gap, parry, parry, gap, long parry, gap, parry, gap, swings in the air, huge attack, parry that. Then a sweep backwards, parry that, and then dodge through the ground effect that's coming after that. This combo is completely set in stone. But I was really getting annoyed by this AoE. Now, one thing I tried very early with Lax, because it's my typical go-to, actually, when these kind of things are happening, is to roll through the boss. If you roll through the boss, it'll tend to land behind you. But Lax kind of blocked that, so I read that here as like, oh, well, that's probably not going to work. It turned out it was the solution. I was like, oh, you just roll through. God damn it, man. Usually I would try that like second or third of my list of how do we deal with this. But when I found that, I actually found some really good stuff, such as you can just kite most of the opening salvo. You can just move away from him, and he won't just leap to your location. He'll do a lot of it there, which then creates some windows of opportunity, such as, oh, now the big attack's coming. All right, cool. I can parry that one. I can get closer to the boss. I can parry the big swing and then dodge through the explosion and actually be on top of the boss, and that's a damage window where I can do some damage and get things started. This was great. This was really cool. However, I have been woefully unprepared to deal with the new combos in Phase 2, and considering I'm about 3 of 5 of my Phase 1 pulls get to Phase 2, and if they do, they get there really cleanly, actually. It's difficult to master those attacks, right? It's difficult to like, okay, it's this. And now they have a lot more graphical noise going on. I said there was one occasion where he was attacking me, and I was like, all my screen is, if I wanted to screenshot it, it's just snow and red. And somewhere in all this noise, there is a golden shoe, which is the bit that I'm attacking. Phenomenal boss model, by the way. Absolutely great. Well, that's where we're up to. This might be the fight that takes me a day. This has the potential. This has the potential to take me a day, especially if late Phase 2 we start running into weapon breaking issues. I have an item to instantly repair my weapon, but this fight does not stop. Everybody who came in and was like, oh, is this, which boss is this? And they were like, oh my god, like, this guy just never stops attacking you. He's just like, attack, 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 attack. But if you get those counters, it is satisfying. So I hope the rest of the phase works out that way. But so far, DLC is very, very thumbs up. Very thumbs up. A good mix. Much better design. Really happy. Let's see if I can bring this down in the day. Because then we're off to a bit of FF14 before, and I can announce here, my team is choosing the next adventure we're going on. They want me to play something that I would never choose myself, but they are assured we will have a great time with. We'll see. All right, see you then.